Hello everyone. Happy Sunday, because it is Sunday as I'm filming this, so I am going to applaud myself for getting my video up on a Sunday this week. So yay me. Hope you all had a great weekend. I've been very busy, so I'm really pleased that I'm able to get this up on time, getting this adjusted right, kind of. So this week we kind of close out the first unit of our semester with finishing up our Ragged Dick essay, and we're moving on into our second one. We're going to start with Plantation Boy this week. Really looking forward to that. It's going to be challenging, likely for some of you, maybe all of you, but it's also going to be quite different from what you're used to doing for literary stuff in a class, especially an English class, where we stress kind of where we stress standard English and you have to write a certain way and all that kind of stuff. So let's start as usual by going over last week. So last week we had our very first peer review of essays, and from your guys' responses, there was only one glitch that happened during the week where someone didn't get feedback, and so we took care of that problem, and you know who you are. I appreciate you getting me the notice on that so quickly. I was able to help you out of that jam. For the rest of you, it sounds like everyone's partnering worked out okay, at least to the point where you got feedback. The responses on the workshopping were kind of, I'm not going to say mixed bag, because almost everyone said it was a positive experience, but positive to the point where you were getting a lot of feedback about grammar, and then the rest of the essay was said it was great. So first off with that, we're going to be working on moving away from that by the time we get to the next workshop, and then we will see where that takes us. And so I'm going to say first off, many of you were kind of iffy about this experience, so I would like to open up the comments in this video this week to anything you guys want, but especially if you have suggestions on how you'd like to do the workshops next time. Granted, we are limited because we're an online class, so there are things that we absolutely cannot do, but perhaps some of you might want to tie in a video version where maybe instead of doing this all written, there's a written portion, and then we need to tie in maybe a phone call or a Skype call or a FaceTime or something like that. Because if someone's talking to you face to face, you can get more instant response than sending back and forth with emails. So reading off some of the comments, let's see what we got here. A lot of you, I think this was the majority comment, that people were uncomfortable with the workshops because of the variety of writing styles, and feeling like your writing style is so different from everyone else's that how could you possibly give them feedback on how they write because you write differently. And so to alleviate that fear, that's kind of the point of these workshops, is to expose you to these different writing styles. Because it's true, no one writes the same way. When I went to grad school, being born and raised here, I didn't write in the same kind of convoluted academic style that a lot of the people I went to grad school with came in already writing that way. And no one told me, like, you can't write this way, you have to up your game. There was a respect of that. You write the way you write, and you still have really great ideas. So just because you don't write like someone else doesn't mean that your response to their writing isn't going to be worthwhile. So the second thing to that is, again, with the grammar correcting. This was something I had stressed in my video last week. If you remember, I said try not to focus on grammar at all, possibly. And then I restated it in those guiding workshop questions. And it seems like many of you perhaps didn't follow that direction, or just didn't know where else to go, in which case that's why you had those guiding workshop questions, was to give you a place to start if you read someone's paper and just said, this is amazing, what am I supposed to tell them? You are supposed to go to those workshop questions and be able to then answer them. You could have just strictly answered those workshop questions because it wasn't a yes or no kind of thing. You would have had to put a lot of effort and thought into it. So I don't know what happened with those. I know some of you used them, and others, I think, I don't even know if they were looked at. But please, 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 that's the kind of feedback we're looking for, is not grammar stuff. We all have grammar issues, hence the reason we all did different grammar rules last week, and we'll talk about that later. But grammar is secondary to, how someone says something versus what they say. What they say is much more important rather than how it's said. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit with this week's new assignment. So, again, next time we do a workshop, we'll try to shift our focus, and I have a plan of maybe giving us a mock workshop where I give everyone the same essay that's not written by anyone in this class, has nothing to do with anything that we'll write, and then maybe we try giving feedback together to see how you can shift that style to something that would be more helpful. Okay. I do want to draw on someone's experience. Dana, this was something you posted, that you're a tutor. And so if you have any specific suggestions here, I don't know what grade you tutor, if it's college or elementary or intermediate high school. I don't know what type of experience you've had, if it's online, in person. But feel free to draw on those experiences to really help give others and myself some insight here. How can we do this workshopping thing a little more effectively? Because I think you might have some different perspectives for us. And then the last thing I want to bring up here is this one. Our essays. This essay revision, the final version of it, is not due for another 6 days. So it's due next Saturday midnight, as it says on the assignment sheet. So I would highly encourage you all to, if you want to, send your essay back to the person who's looked at it and give them something specific you want them to look at. As you're writing an essay, we all know I need help with the introduction here, or my evidence isn't strong enough. Maybe send a paper back and say, can you look at my intro? Can you look at my evidence? Can you look at my organization? If you give the person who's looking at your paper something to focus on, maybe you can get some better feedback there. So I won't require it because I know there's likely a time crunch that will occur here. But if you want to get some better feedback, or if you've already written a revision and you want more feedback, send it back to the person who looked at it for you before. Or if you happen to have someone else you'd like to look at it within the class, feel free to contact them. If you've never talked to them before, make sure you introduce yourself in your email and then ask if they might have a few moments to look at your paper. I do require the one workshop, but if you guys want to have more and more feedback, it's totally up to you and totally free for you to do that and get more feedback from people. Okay? And actually, what was nice is this idea came from Natasha's post, I think, who said she got her essay back with, I didn't get a lot of feedback as to what to fix, so I sent it back to the same person and asked if they could give me something to work on. So sometimes you just need to give that other person the freedom to say, in nicer terms, your paper sucks in this area. And they will then feel more free to criticize your paper a little bit. I think there's a little fear, especially considering that even though we see each other's videos every week, none of us have really talked face to face, I think, unless you guys are in classes together that I don't know about. So feel free to do that this week. Again, it's not required, but if you feel like you didn't get anything worthwhile, I would highly encourage it. And then the video blogs last week were a ton of fun for me to watch. Nearly everyone got exactly what I was going for. There was just one person who didn't quite understand the list your 3 things and then pick one, but everyone else did. And so we have a few that may have popped up more than once, but that's fine because everyone's going to have a different way to teach it, and one person's way to teach the concept might connect with certain people and not with others. So if we hear it more than once, we're likely to get it. So some of the popular ones were the who and whom. What's the difference between the two? And I might actually post something on that. I got a really funny, it's like a radio version of SNL. It's a whole skit about who and whom, and I may post that under one of your guys' posts. I think it was, let's see, the person who posted on that this week was Matthew. So watch for a comment to be going up. I got to see how I can get an audio link on there. We had who and that. The difference when you use who and that come up quite a bit. Apostrophes were a thing. Lie and lay were also popular. And then using quotes with different types of punctuation, affect and effect. So the way you guys were all teaching these different rules to each other was excellent. Some of you are far more advanced than I ever would be. I think it was Joseph, Steve. You were able to do this really cool video within the presentation kind of thing. So I'll have to figure out from you how to do that. I've been trying to figure that out all semester. I've had things I wanted to do that with here, and I don't know how. So keep that list in mind. If you forget, these video blogs are always going to be up this semester, so you'll be able to go back and check. And we'll have our next one of those coming up in, let's see here. Our next one comes up during week 10. So another 5 weeks essentially from now, we got our next grammar rule. And I'm placing these so that you can incorporate the things you learn into your papers that you're writing. So a lot of you were saying like the quotes and punctuation. Oh, I didn't know periods and commas always go inside. And I made a ton of those mistakes in my drafts, so now I can go back and fix them. So great job with those. The other thing I really liked with those, some of you really went into the history of the rules that you chose. So the quotation marks and punctuation, again, this was Natasha, I think, talked about how the reason we do it this way, the reason the rule was created was when printers were placing their type on a printing press and they didn't want the little commas and periods to break off, so they protected them with the quotation mark blocks. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. And we had another one of those with irony as well, breaking down the root and where it comes from. It's much better than the explanation I sometimes give to students when they ask me, why do we do this? And I just go, because English is stupid and we have rules that we just created for no reason. Apparently, I've been wrong this whole time. So thank you for educating me there. All right, so talking about this week then. This week, first thing, again, is you have your first essay due on Saturday. Okay, so if you look on the syllabus, there is a little mention there of how I want things formatted. I think I even mentioned, let me go double check on that. Yes, I even mentioned how I want the files in PDF form. So if you've been using Google Docs or Microsoft Word for your draft, it's pretty easy to convert those over. With Google Docs, you just go to File and Download. I think it's Download As, and it lets you download it as a PDF. In Microsoft Word, File, Save As, and you can change, there's a drop-down menu to change the file type. I don't think any of you will have it as pages format because of the way I asked you to format your draft. But if you do, when you go on pages, you go File, Print, or whatever Apple says, something print, and on the print little pop-up window, it should give you an option, print to PDF. If you have any questions with doing the PDFs, please let me know. And then I get very specific here. And to save my own sanity, I ask you to save it with a certain file name. So this is on page 5 of the syllabus. It says to save it as English 200, your last name, underscore, and the title of the assignment. So whatever the assignment title on Laulima is, you can feel free to use that rather than the actual title of your essay. By the way, make sure you have a title for your essay that's not essay number 1 or explication essay. Be creative here. Have fun with that part. So the PDF name, file name, no spaces, just the underscore in between your last name and the title of the assignment. Okay? So again, that's due to Laulima. Double check on that. It should be due by October 1st. That's this coming Saturday at midnight. Yes. October 1st at midnight this Saturday. Make sure you have it posted to Laulima. You do not need to post your draft there as well. I pretty much trust you guys. I don't think anyone would have written a blog post about getting comments if they really didn't get comments. So I think we're okay there. So just your final posted to Laulima by midnight on Saturday. And one thing to note, because it doesn't let me do like 11:59, it's going to show the due date as midnight on Sunday, because, you know, the way time works, 12 a.m. is actually the first minute of Sunday morning. So make sure you get the right date there. It's Saturday, midnight, 11:59 Saturday. All right, enough about that. So for this week then, we're shifting gears. You're finishing that essay off, but we're also going to shift. We're going to shift into our next text that we'll read. So that is Milton Murayama's Plantation Boy. And again, this is the text that's in Pidgin, all of it. The narration, the dialogue, there's letters that are sent between characters that are written in Pidgin, and they're also blacked out in some spots for military authenticity. You'll see what that's all about as you read. So first thing you're going to do is watch this video, check mark that off as you're watching this. Second thing, you're going to read Plantation Boy, not much of it, and I'll tell you why in a second. Pages 3 through 16, which is the first 3 chapters of the book. This is a fairly short book. It's not long. I think it's even shorter than Ragged Dick, but it's a lot more difficult to understand just because of the language. Even if you speak Pidgin, you're going to find that this is not the same Pidgin you're speaking now, because this was Pidgin of 1940s, 1950s Hawaii. Slightly different. A lot more of the words are derived from other cultures. It wasn't quite its own thing back then, because we're much closer to the plantation times. It was still plantation times back then. So you're going to read those first 3 chapters just to get us into the book, to get us familiar, or at least kind of familiar with the language. And then to help us deal with that even better, our blog and video responses are focusing strictly on language this week. Not the content of the story, but the language of the story. So your video response, I posted that first this week because I think you should do the video before you do the blog. It will help. The video response is kind of fun. You guys are going to teach each other Pidgin this week. Okay, so again, if you're a Pidgin speaker, this is going to be a breeze, maybe, or at least just a load of fun for you all. On the video page, I've posted 6 different links. I would say you don't have to look at them all, but the first 4 are pretty crucial, especially if you have no understanding of Pidgin whatsoever. You weren't allowed to talk it growing up, or you're coming from the mainland learning this new language, essentially. So the first 4 give a nice breakdown of the history of Pidgin. Actually, the first one is not even about Hawaiian Pidgin at all. It's about the difference between a Pidgin and a Creole, to set you up for some of that linguistic difference. Because we call what we speak the local talk Pidgin with a capital P, but really it's Hawaiian Creole English. And reading that source, you'll figure out the difference. Pidgin is the language that's created for a group of people to communicate, but it's no one's native language. It becomes a Creole when there's a whole generation brought up speaking that pidgin as their first language. So we started with Hawaiian Creole English as a pidgin in the plantation era. Now we're so far distanced from that it is a Creole language. Okay, so the first 4 break that down. A couple of them have really great resources, clips from some longer documentaries that I don't have access to because we have to pay for them. But one by Waianae High School about pidgin, and another one that was on PBS, I believe, several years back about how pidgin developed, and it's got a really interesting thing in the video about where the word manapua comes from. And another website breaks down the grammar, the vocabulary, pronunciation, and that kind of stuff. And then the last 2 are actually from a local comedian. Many of you probably know Andy Bumatai. And he has done a series of videos on pidgin, and they're called the Daily Pidgin. So I've got a link there I'm hoping works that has all of the Daily Pidgin videos. It's just a YouTube search. So I plugged that search, the address from the search in, and created a link for you guys. And then the other one before that, 5th post or 5th link, is his talking about how pidgin has become an official language of our state, which is quite interesting. And he does a video in pidgin with English subtitles, so it's kind of fun to watch. And so what you guys are going to be doing, you read those / watch those first, and then you're going to do your video post this week, where by starting off telling us a little bit about the history of Hawaiian Creole English. You can get that from the sources or any searches you do on your own. Talk about where the language came from, why it developed, and maybe even what the status of pidgin English is in contemporary society. So do we view people who speak pidgin a certain way, or has any stigmas associated with pidgin kind of disappeared? And then from there, I want you to talk about one specific aspect of Hawaiian Creole English / pidgin. So vocabulary, sentence structure, pronunciation, grammar, or anything else you might think would be useful for us in starting our reading of Plantation Boy. And you're going to teach it to the rest of us. Okay? You can think of this as similar to your videos from last week with the grammar rules. So you can feel free, like Steve did, to create another video presentation thing, or you can do your write-up on your papers. And I don't know if I screwed people up with that last week, but all the papers and the videos were reversed, and I think you guys tried to write them backwards. So double check on your video before you post them, or try something out, and maybe you don't have to worry about mirroring. I don't know. My videos come out backwards when I write the regular way. So teach us about some aspect of Hawaiian Creole English to help us understand the language, not the history, but how to understand when someone says something in pidgin, how can we break part of it down. And then I encourage you to maybe pull a few passages from Plantation Boy for you to read out loud. Sorry, my bedroom's kind of sunny this afternoon. And then that will help us possibly to get a better idea of how the language in the text itself sounds. And you might break down, do a whole translation of a short passage or something. One warning, there are several Japanese words used in Plantation Boy because the main character is Japanese, of Japanese descent. So there's going to be some mixture of pidgin and some of Japanese. If you have a background in Japanese, that might be a great thing to pull for your reading in your video post. So that's the video. And then the blog post, I'm asking you to think about the link between language and identity. And I do that by having you read Amy Tan's Mother Tongue. It's a short piece of writing. It's like a short story, but it's more like an essay type thing. And Tan talks about her struggles of speaking different Englishes. She's a Chinese American, and she speaks a certain type of English with her mom. She speaks a certain type of English when she goes and gives a presentation. She presents pieces of her writing. So I want you to read that, and then think about her experiences in light of your own. So how have you gone through similar things? Do you speak Pidgin? Do you speak a second language? Are your parents not English speakers? Do you have relatives other than your parents that you have to either translate for? You speak to them in their native tongue, or you have to speak a different type of English, like we got Spanglish, we got Pidgin, like we're talking about. You have the Creole that they might speak in the South, that's like the mixture of French and I think it's Jamaican and English and all sorts of things. So what are your experiences there? If you have never had one of those experiences, you can talk about having seen someone else or knowing someone else who has gone through something like that, where they have multiple types of English that they speak. And so the blog post says, discuss at least 2 different languages you've used in writing and speaking, and be specific in your description of each one, explaining why that language is appropriate for a particular occasion or audience. So this goes back to tying in our discussion of audience from a couple weeks ago when we were reading the 2nd chapter of The Craft of Research. Then the second part of that is to define your mother tongue. Try to define the influences that have shaped both how you say things and what you say. To what extent is your language, things like word choice, pronunciation, dialect, and second language skills, influenced by your parents, your peers, your education, the part of the country in which you grew up? And then the ultimate tie-in, how does language define us? As we get further and further into Plantation Boy, you're going to see that the main character, Tosh, has a difficult time being a Pidgin speaker, a Japanese speaker, and an English speaker, and having to create a transition between the 3. So for that one, you're just answering the questions, making sure you answer everything that's brought up there. There's kind of a lot. It's almost a 2-part response there. Okay, so watch your video, finish your essay from the last few weeks, the last unit, read the first 3 chapters of Plantation Boy, and do your video and blog responses on the language issue that comes up there. As we move further into Plantation Boy in the coming weeks, we'll turn from language to talking about the historical events. So be looking for, I'm also going to post some things about the author. I'll post those with the schedule as well, some author bio and some, maybe I haven't had much luck finding a good summary of Plantation Boy, but if I find something, I'll post that there as well. So be on the lookout for those. And I think that's all I have to say. So great work for those of you that are still with us so far. I know there's a couple that we've lost, so if you're one of those too, please come back, rejoin the class. We'd love to hear what you have to say. As for the rest of you, I've been enjoying these last 5 weeks. We are 1/3 of the way through the semester, and so let's tackle the second third, and we'll move forward from there. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Saturday.